Okay, Monday, 16th of June 2025. So, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Money Monday, Bitcoin, and everything else. Concerns about the Bitcoin Treasury companies. So, what I've noticed, interesting little observation, is that a lot of the companies seem, use that word quite loosely, to be adopting Bitcoin and putting on their balance sheet. That's good because it takes conviction, awareness, education, etc., and infrastructure and regulation to do that and make it happen. Very nice progress. I did a video about this a few weeks ago now. Snapshot fallacy. It's still progress, even though you might belittle it. It's still progress compared to say 5-10 years ago. However, my general concern at first glance is that it's one. If you're putting it on your balance sheet and it's gathering dust, it's doing nothing. That's great over the long term. Great, amazing. It's a savings mechanism. Very nice. Okay. Then you could say, well, what's being done with it? Now, in general, you don't have to do anything with it because we're all adults here. Do what you want, but be prepared to face the consequences. However, some would say, well, we have all this liquidity in terms of if priced in dollars. What are we going to do with it? This is one thing I saw in El Salvador when I was there. It's fine to have all this Bitcoin on the balance sheet and appreciating, but what do you do with it? How do you access the liquidity? Infrastructure question, really. But also at the same time you've got it, how are you using it in the business? Not just adopting it and holding it, but how are you using it? How are you using it in terms of leverage or in terms of financial instruments, but also, that's it, leverage, debt. Because the moves we see today will be the names. We're sowing the seeds of the bear market today. Some of the companies out there today who are taking on debt to buy Bitcoin in, let's say, 6 months, 6 years, 16 years, who knows, they'll be the ones going bankrupt and belly up and have to probably sell all their Bitcoin. Who knows who could it be? Who knows which one? It could be a company that's yet to even start buying Bitcoin. They won't start buying for 8 months. But in 8 years, they'll be the one that goes belly up because they didn't really know how to integrate it or didn't get any ideas or whatever an excuse, and or too much debt, too much leverage, and the market price hit their strike price and got a margin call. Things like that. We are seeing the seeds of the bear market being sown, being planted today. That in 6 years, let's say, will come to fruition. There will be someone out there that will go belly up, that will cause a big catastrophe in 6 years. It will domino effect, so to speak. Okay. But then also at the same time, what are they doing with those coins in general? And you could say we're using it as leverage, lending it out for a yield. Yeah, for example. Or even at a deeper level, businesses will be using it and integrating it. And I said before a few times that when Apple start buying Bitcoin, I imagine that they would create a Bitcoin native wallet and put on the Apple Pay app. And they would say, right, well, whenever people pay with Bitcoin for something, because the infrastructure is out there for people to buy stuff with Bitcoin, Apple will take a portion of that, a fee from that transaction, and they'll do something with it. Hold on to it for 6 years, whatever, cold storage. Or they'll use a portion of that for collateral to borrow more to reinvest in capex. Or they'll use a portion of it and sell it for dollars and pay down debt. Things like that. They would figure out a way to integrate it into the business. And that's really the even better thing to see and to have, because then it's got more of an integral part of the business as opposed to borrowing money just to hold on to it, which is fine. But I'm also thinking in terms of development, infrastructure, adoption. What else is there? It's integrated into the business model, integrated in the financial structure, like what Strategy is doing. Especially if they acquire it in a budget neutral, let's say, that's a nice buzzword recently, way, meaning they acquire it without spending money and or getting debt. And you could go even one step further to say, well, who are the people providing the debt? Are those people just, fiat rich and just Bitcoin heavy, or do they want to short Bitcoin, or do they not believe in it, or just in general it's a completely different business model or mindset? It's just something to think about. Just in general, who is taking the other side of that trade to lend the people the money? If they're lending Strategy cash at 7%, and they're taking that cash, buying Bitcoin, and it's appreciating at 30%, then it's a speculative idea. Why don't they just buy Bitcoin directly instead, for example? Or there's some nuances, because you could say, well, it's a senior. If it's a debt, it's going to be a bond, therefore it's senior to common stock, for example. But just an interesting thought. But we'll see businesses integrate it into their business model, like Apple, like Amazon. And already I'm hearing talk that Amazon are exploring, I don't know the details, but exploring ways how to integrate stable coins. Fair enough. But then we can go one step further and say businesses being built natively on Bitcoin. And that itself is an interesting revolution almost. Because it's companies that existed in the 90s, when they adopted the internet, they kind of integrated it into their business model. And it was a bit of a hybrid. But nowadays, we wouldn't think of starting a business unless it was basically digital native, online by default. And we're kind of seeing that today, where it's an integration of old and the new. And who knows, in the next 6 months, 6 years, we will see companies that are purely built on top of Bitcoin, purely integrated onto a Bitcoin standard from day one. Just how some businesses today that are purely internet based today, there's no way they could have been possible, the business model, the structure, in the 90s and the 80s. The infrastructure, the tech, did not exist. And that's why fundamentally, in 15, 30 years from now, there'll be jobs in industries that today don't exist, that we can't even imagine. That'll be common. Just how today, let's say the role of, say, social media manager was not possible or couldn't be imagined in the 1990s or 80s. That's quite powerful. So companies start integrating Bitcoin into the function of their business, accepting Bitcoin as payment, pay suppliers or contractors in Bitcoin. That's interesting. Settle international trade with Bitcoin, eliminating foreign exchange friction. Use Bitcoin-backed loans for growth. We have this liquidity, use it as collateral, let's grow without spending the Bitcoin. Monetize Bitcoin rails via Lightning Network. That is interesting. Use Bitcoin as part of loyalty reward programs. And we're seeing that already with one of the credit cards, Gemini, one of the exchanges. Build internal Treasury solutions based on Bitcoin rather than USD. And that essentially means going to a Bitcoin standard and pricing everything in Satoshis, pricing everything in Bitcoin, not pounds, dollars, or euros. And that takes a mental flip. And then to go further, Bitcoin native businesses, exchanges, custodians, Lightning payment processors, global remittance platform is built on Lightning, Bitcoin lending desk with over-collateralized risk structures, using it natively. And that will give you a real cutting edge, because an interesting thing I've also noticed a lot with these treasury companies, people will buy them. People will buy these treasury companies hoping to outperform Bitcoin. Now, it's possible on a short-term basis, a here and there kind of thing. You know, in the next 5 minutes, this asset over there will appreciate more than Bitcoin does. But over the next 10 minutes, 10 hours, 10 days, Bitcoin's the winner. And that is lagging way behind. So, if you are driving at, say, 10 miles per hour, and Bitcoin is driving at, just say, 100 miles per hour, you can't compete. But if you're built on top of Bitcoin, 100 plus 10, 110. If you're built on top of Bitcoin, and especially if Bitcoin's the new hurdle rate, meaning if you're not beating Bitcoin's growth, then you're losing money just by default, by definition. So, if you're not built on top of Bitcoin or integrating it somehow into your business, over time, 6 months, 6 years, 16 years, you name it, you pick a time period, if you are not using Bitcoin, you'll be outcompeted. The competition will outgrow you. Everything goes to zero against Bitcoin. But if you're building on top of Bitcoin, like a rocket jet to the moon, you're future-proofing. It's an extra way to really refine and ensure the business is future-proofed. And one simple way to do that is hold it on the balance sheet, i.e. Bitcoin Treasury Company. Interesting. So how can you compete? How can you outcompete Bitcoin? Well, you are Bitcoin plus something else. And then you could say, is it worth being that something else in terms of time, energy, risk, reward? Yes, no, maybe. It's a personal subjective choice. But that's the idea. That's what the logic leads to. To outcompete Bitcoin, if it's a new hurdle rate, you've got to integrate it in the business. At least hold it on the balance sheet. And here we are. Ah, interesting. And if it's built on top of Bitcoin natively, if you're pricing things in Bitcoin, that helps with adoption. That helps with the circular economies. That helps with everything. Because if you're Bitcoin native, it doesn't matter what the price is. It can be anywhere. But if you're pricing everything in Bitcoin, denominating in Bitcoin, you're future-proofing yourself furthermore. You're more price agnostic. It doesn't matter where the price of Bitcoin is in dollars or pounds or euros. It's irrelevant because you're not measuring your purchasing power in dollars, pounds, or euros. Just how in the same way, I'm not valuing my purchasing power in, say, Argentine pesos, Turkish lira, or Indian rupee, for example. I'm not pricing it in that. I'm pricing it in pounds, a stronger currency, meaning a currency with less inflation, especially Argentine peso and Turkish lira. I did a video about this as well, actually. Spend weak fiat, save Bitcoin. Now, earn strong fiat, pound, dollars, euros, save in Bitcoin, spend in weak, inflating fiat. That's a whole other conversation. So then, what makes a Bitcoin company robust or fragile? Revenue source, leverage, Bitcoin usage, business model, survivability, and who they compete with. If you're on a Bitcoin standard, no. When you go onto a Bitcoin standard, you are by definition competing everyone else. As everything goes to zero against Bitcoin, and there's countless charts to show this and prove this, but you're built on top of Bitcoin, you've already won. They can run as fast as they want in this system here, but if they're denominating their wealth and valuing their wealth in a melting ice cube, so to speak, it's Red Queen syndrome. They're running faster and faster just to stay in the same place. And you, just by being on this lifeboat, as the world falls apart or money supply increases, you're just going with the tide, raising as the ride goes. You're going up. So then we could say, then who survives the next shakeout? Bear market, we could say. Companies that think long term, generate yield denominated in Bitcoin, or generate revenues in Bitcoin, as in pricing it in Bitcoin, avoid margin or loan to value exposure, again, leverage again, as in well maintained and managed. That's the key, well maintained and managed. And build services that have a moat, that's hard to replicate, custody, privacy, remittance, lightning routing, decentralized entity, those kind of things. Take it to the next level. Yeah, powerful stuff. Yeah. And that's why I said in the past about Apple. Apple won't just buy Bitcoin. They'll monetize Bitcoin's network effects. They'll use it for their native Bitcoin wallet. They'll integrate it into Apple Pay, let customers earn or spend Bitcoin rewards. Yeah. They'll use it internally as a settlement between App Store regions. Yeah, I guess so. It's possible. Offer Apple security Bitcoin custody inside iOS. Yeah. Create hybrid Bitcoin options, so Bitcoin plus fiat credit card products. And eventually offer Lightning native micro subscriptions inside the ecosystem. Whoa, wow, it's insane. Yeah, there'll be different apps. And the people want to charge, the developers want to charge people subscription by the minute, by the hour, by the second. And that will be done a lot faster and easier through a micropayment Lightning network, a layer 2 on top of Bitcoin in their own Apple wallet. Whoa, that's going to create all kinds of apps out there that can do amazing things. People want a subscription per cost, per product, or per hour, per minute, as opposed to per quarter, per month. Micropayments. Wow. Yes. Yeah. Like a productive Bitcoin operating company. Productive Bitcoin operating company. Wow. So, yes, very nice. So that's some interesting observations about what's happening. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.